You killed my father. You killed my husband. You've destroyed my family. Claire's voice echoed through the dark mine shaft. Blackwood smiled, his gun aimed at her chest. Brave words from a widow with 5 hungry children. Tell me, who will care for them when you're dead? She moved faster than he expected. One gunshot changed everything. If you're watching this at 2 a.m. instead of sleeping, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from right now. And if you want more stories like this, hit that subscribe button. You won't regret it. Now let's begin. The wind carried the gunshot across 3 miles of frozen Montana wilderness before it reached Samuel Carter's ears. A single crack, sharp and final, then silence so complete it felt like the mountains themselves had stopped breathing. Sam reined his horse to a halt. The gelding's breath came in white clouds that dissolved into the January twilight. Around them, pines stood dark against snow that held the last pale light of day. The kind of light that made everything look like memory, like something already lost. He should keep riding. That was the smart choice. The wind was picking up again, pulling snow from the branches in lazy spirals, and he had maybe an hour before full dark made the trail impossible. Whatever that gunshot meant, it wasn't his concern. Nothing in Montana was his concern. He was just passing through, same as he'd been passing through Oklahoma and Wyoming and Colorado before that. 8 years of passing through, never stopping long enough to leave footprints that lasted beyond the next snowfall. But something held him. Not the shot itself that could have been a hunter, could have been someone putting down an injured animal. It was the silence after. No second shot, no voices calling out. Just that awful quiet that said someone had done something they couldn't take back. Sam touched his heels to the horse's flanks and turned toward the sound. The trail climbed through stands of cottonwood and aspen, their bare branches clicking together like bones. Snow had drifted deep in places, forcing him to dismount and lead the horse through. His boots broke through the crust with each step, and the cold worked its way up through the worn leather, through wool socks that had seen better winters. By the time he crested the ridge, the last light was bleeding out of the sky, leaving everything the blue-gray color of gunmetal. That's when he saw the body. The man lay face down in the snow, 20 yards off the trail, one arm thrown out, the other tucked beneath him. Dark stains spread from under his chest, black against white in the dying light. The snow around him was churned up boot prints and horse tracks overlapping, heading north along a game trail that disappeared into the timber. Sam approached slowly, his right hand loose near the Colt on his hip. The body was fresh, the blood still liquid in places where it had pooled. He knelt, rolled the man onto his back. Mid-30s beard, frosted with voice eyes open and already filming over. The bullet had taken him in the upper back, punched clean through. Exit wound the size of a silver dollar in his chest. No way that was an accident. The man's coat pockets held the usual things. A folding knife, $3 in paper money, tobacco pouch. In the inside pocket, wrapped in oilcloth to keep it dry, Sam found a letter. The paper crackled as he unfolded it, and he had to hold it close to read in the fading light. The handwriting was a woman's, careful and educated. My dearest Robert, the children ask for you every night. Emma helps me with the little ones, but she's only 9 and should not have to carry such weight. Thomas tries to be brave. The baby coughs terribly. Please, if you find help in Hebron, send word. We are nearly out of flour. I do not write this to burden you, only to say we wait for you. We believe in you. Come home safe. Your loving wife, Claire. Sam read it twice. Looked at the dead man at the wedding band on his left hand, at the way his beard had been recently trimmed, probably by that same careful hand that wrote the letter. Robert. Husband. Father of how many? The letter mentioned Emma Thomas, a baby. At least 3 children, maybe more. He folded the letter, tucked it back in the oilcloth. The dead man's eyes stared up at nothing. Sam reached over and closed them. The smart thing would be to ride to Hebron, find the law, report a body. Let them handle it. Let them ride out to some cabin and tell a woman named Claire that her husband wasn't coming home. Sam could be in Wyoming by week's end, Colorado, by the month's end, somewhere warm by spring. He could forget this trail, this body, that careful handwriting saying we believe in you. But he'd tried forgetting before. It didn't take. Sam stood, studied the tracks. 2 riders had come from the north, met Robert on the trail. There'd been words judging by how churned up the snow was. Then they'd shot him in the back as he tried to run. Clean murder, nothing accidental about it. The riders had headed back north after no attempt to hide what they'd done. The letter mentioned Hebron, said Robert was going there for help. Sam pulled out his own map, traced the trails with a finger going numb from cold. If Robert had left from somewhere north of here, heading for Hebron to the south, and made it this far before someone stopped him, that meant his cabin was maybe 5 miles back the way the killers had come. 5 mile. A woman and at least 3 children waiting for a man who would never arrive. Waiting through tonight, tomorrow, the day after. How long before they gave up hope? How long before they ran out of flour, out of firewood, out of time? Sam looked at the body one more time, at the wedding band, at the hands that had probably held his children, touched his wife's face, promised to come home safe. He muttered a curse that came out white in the frozen air, climbed back on his horse, and turned north. The cabin appeared an hour later, hunched against the mountain, like something trying to hide. No smoke rose from the chimney, no light showed in the windows. Just a small, dark box slowly disappearing under fresh snow. Sam dismounted 100 yards out, ground-tied his horse, and approached on foot. His boots made almost no sound in the fresh powder. He could hear the wind in the pines, the creak of tree branches, nothing else. No voices, no sounds of life. The door was swollen shut from ice and snow packed against it. Sam knocked, called out. Nothing. He knocked again, harder, called louder. This time he heard it faint as a ghost, a child's cough from inside. He put his shoulder to the door. The frame cracked, ice shattered, and the door swung inward on leather hinges that screamed in protest. The cold inside felt worse than outside, if that was possible. The kind of cold that lived in your lungs that made your teeth ache. What little light remained, it showed him a single room, a fireplace full of ash, a crude table, 2 chairs, a shelf with empty jars, and in the far corner, piled under what looked like every blanket and piece of clothing, the cabin contained 5 shapes that barely moved. Sam crossed to them, knelt. The blankets shifted. A girl's face emerged, maybe 9 years old, skin pale as milk, lips cracked and bleeding. Her eyes focused on him with difficulty. "Papa?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "No, sweetheart. I'm Sam. I'm here to help." The girl tried to sit up, couldn't manage it. "Mama's sick. The baby won't wake up right." Sam pulled back more of the blankets. A woman lay there unconscious or close to it. Late 20s, maybe 30. Dark hair matted with sweat despite the cold. Next to her, 3 more children. A boy around 7, 2 smaller ones, maybe 3 and 5. And in the woman's arms, wrapped in what looked like a baptism gown, an infant whose lips had gone the color of old bruises. The smart thing, the right thing would be to check them all, assess who needed help most. But Sam had seen that color before on his own son's lips years ago when he'd pulled Daniel from the burning cabin. He knew what it meant. He scooped up the baby, brought it close to the dying light from the door, pressed 2 fingers to the tiny neck, searching for a pulse he was terrified he wouldn't find. There. Faint, irregular, but there. The child's chest barely moved, breaths so shallow they hardly counted, but they were breaths. "All right," Sam said more to himself than anyone else. "All right, we can work with this." He'd ridden with a deputy marshal for 2 years, helped pull survivors from a flash flood in Arkansas, knew field medicine the way any man who'd lived rough had to know it. You got them warm first, breathing second, food and water third. Everything else could wait. But he had no fire, no kindling, and night was coming fast. Sam laid the baby back in the woman's arms, stood, made himself think. His horse had saddlebags with jerky hardtack, a bedroll, a small bag of oats. He had flint and steel. What he needed was wood. Outside, he found a small shed that leaned worse than the cabin. Inside, a few tools, some traps, and maybe 20 pieces of split wood. Not enough for a night, but enough to start. He gathered what he could carry, brought it inside. The children hadn't moved. The woman's eyes had opened slightly, watching him with a confusion that suggested fever or worse. Sam knelt beside her. "Ma'am, I'm going to start a fire. Then I'm going to make you something warm to drink. I need you to hold on." She didn't respond, just closed her eyes again. The fireplace was clogged with old ash that flew half frozen. Sam cleared it with his bare hands, built a small pyramid of kindling, struck sparks until one caught. The first flame guttered, nearly died, then found purchase and grew. He fed it carefully, piece by piece, nursing it like the fragile thing it was. Warmth. Not much, not yet, but enough that he could see his breath in the firelight instead of just feeling it. While the fire built, Sam went back outside to his horse. The gelding stamped unhappy about being left in the cold. Sam pulled the saddlebags free, the bedroll, everything he had. Inside the bags wrapped in canvas to stay dry, he found his emergency supplies. Coffee, sugar, salt, dried beef, a small pot. Things he'd learned never to travel without. Back inside, the fire had taken hold. Real heat now pushing back the cold inch by inch. Sam hung his pot from the crane in the fireplace, filled it with snow he scooped from just outside the door. While the snow melted, he broke up pieces of jerky into his tin cup, poured water over them when the pot began to steam. The oldest girl, Emma, had managed to sit up. She watched him with eyes that had seen too much grown, too old, too fast. "Are you real?" she asked. "Last time I checked. I thought maybe you were a dream. Or dead. We thought we might be dead." "You're not dead, just cold and hungry. We're going to fix that." The broth in his cup was thin, barely more than flavored water, but it was warm and had salt and protein. Sam brought it to the woman first, lifted her head, pressed the cup to her lips. She drank without really waking, some animal instinct taking over. Not much, maybe a quarter of the cup, but enough. Next was the baby. Sam dripped liquid onto his finger, touched it to the infant's lips. The baby's mouth worked, swallowed. He did it again and again, patient as time. After 5 minutes, some color had started to return to those lips. After 10, the baby's eyes opened, unfocused but alive. He divided the rest among the other children. The boy Thomas drank like he'd been lost in the desert. The younger ones took longer, had to be coaxed, but they managed. Emma drank last in small sips, never taking her eyes off Sam. "Where's my papa?" she asked when the cup was empty. Sam had been expecting this question, had been dreading it. In his experience, there were two kinds of lies. The kind you told because the truth would hurt worse than the lie, and the kind you told because you didn't have the courage for honesty. He'd told both kinds in his life, regretted most of them. Why? But sitting there in that frozen cabin, looking at a 9-year-old girl who'd probably spent the last week keeping her siblings alive while her mother faded, Sam couldn't find it in himself to add more weight to shoulders that already carried too much. "I don't know, sweetheart. I was riding through, saw your cabin didn't have smoke from the chimney. Thought I should check." It wasn't quite a lie, just not the whole truth. The distinction felt thin, but Sam held to it anyway. "He went to Hebron," Emma said, "for help, for food. He said he'd be back by Sunday." "What day is it now?" "Friday, I think. Maybe Saturday. I lost track." So Robert had been gone 6, maybe 7 days, long enough to reach Hebron and back twice over in decent weather. But the weather hadn't been decent. Sam had seen the drifts, knew how treacherous the trails could get. A man could get lost, could hole up somewhere waiting for the storm to pass. Could be delayed for all kinds of reasons that had nothing to do with killers on a frozen trail. Except Sam knew better. He'd seen the body, seen the bullet wound, seen how Robert had died running. "Your mama," Sam said. "How long has she been like this?" 3 days, maybe 4. She kept getting up, trying to do things, then she'd fall. Yesterday, she stopped getting up. 3 or 4 days unconscious. That was bad. Could be fever, could be exposure, could be 100 things, none of them good. Sam checked her pulse, her breathing. Both steady enough, if weak. Her skin felt hot to the touch, despite the cold. "Definitely fever." "We need more wood," he said. "A lot more. And I need to look around, see what you have here." Emia nodded toward the corner. "There's a root cellar, under the boards. Papa dug it before winter, but there's hardly anything left. Some turnips. They might be frozen." Sam found the trap door, lifted it. The cellar below was barely 5 feet deep, just enough to keep vegetables from freezing solid. In the dim light from the fire, he could make out maybe a dozen turnips, shriveled and soft. Some potatoes that had sprouted eyes. A jar of something that might have been preserves once. Not enough to feed 5 people for a week. Barely enough for a day. He climbed back up, replaced the trap door. The cabin had one window shuttered from outside. A shelf with empty jars. A trunk that held clothes, mostly children's things, much mended. Everything spoke of poverty, the kind that crept in slow and settled permanent. This family had been struggling long before the father left. Outside again, Sam circled the cabin in the growing dark. Found a wood pile behind the shed, but it was buried under 4 feet of snow, and what he could dig out was frozen solid, would take hours to thaw enough to burn. He found tracks days old and nearly filled in, leading south. Robert's tracks, heading for Hebron. Heading for help that came too late. No other tracks, no signs of visitors. Just this small family alone on their piece of mountain, slowly freezing. Sam stood there in the dark snow, falling steady now, and let himself think about what he'd stepped into. A dead man on a trail, a widow who didn't know she was a widow, 5 children who were going to wake up tomorrow, still believing their father might walk through that door. And him, Samuel Carter, the last man who should be here, the last man who had any business trying to save anyone. 8 years ago, he'd been a deputy in Oklahoma Territory, had a wife, Sarah, a son, Daniel, just 2 years old. They'd lived in a small cabin outside of Guthrie, nothing fancy, but it was theirs. Sam had been investigating a gang that had robbed a railroad payroll, killed 2 guards in the process. Good work, important work. The kind of work that made him feel like he mattered. He'd been gone 3 days following leads when it happened. Came home to find the cabin reduced to ash and blackened timbers. Found Sarah and Daniel inside, or what was left of them. The marshal had called it an accident, said the stove must have failed, sparked a fire. But Sarah had been careful, always careful. And there were details that didn't add up. Tracks in the mud that looked like multiple horses. The door jammed shut from outside. A smell that wasn't quite right for an accidental fire. Before Sam could investigate properly, the gang he'd been chasing disappeared. Vanished like smoke. Word on the street said they'd gotten spooked, figured the law was too close, split up and went to ground. The marshal closed the case on Sam's family, moved on to other things. But Sam had found something Sarah had left him. Scratched into the dirt floor of the cabin with a piece of charred wood barely visible under all the ash. 2 letters, H.W. He'd searched for 2 years following every Harrison and Henry and Howard from Oklahoma to California. Found nothing. Eventually the search consumed him more than sustained him. He quit the marshal service, took odd jobs, drifted, told himself he was still looking, but mostly he was just running. Running from the memory of what he'd lost, from the guilt that aided him like acid from the knowledge that he'd failed the people who needed him most. And now here he was standing in the snow outside another cabin, another family at the edge of disaster. The universe had a sense of humor, cruel and precise. Sam went back inside. The fire had warmed the room enough that he could see the children's breath instead of just his own. Small victories. He added more wood, watched the flames consume it. Emma was still awake, still watching him. "Are you staying?" she asked. "For tonight," Sam said. "Storm's getting worse. Be foolish to ride in this. And tomorrow, when the snow stopped and the trail became passable again. When the smart thing would be to ride away, let the law handle this. Let someone else break the news to this family. Let someone else try to put broken pieces back together." Sam thought about Sarah's last message. 2 letters that had haunted him for years. Thought about how he'd given up looking, given up hoping, settled into a life of motion without purpose. Thought about Robert's body cooling on that trail and how the men who'd killed him were riding free right now, probably sleeping sound, probably not giving a damn about the family they destroyed. "We'll see what tomorrow brings," he said. It was the best answer he had. The night deepened. Sam kept the fire fed, kept watch while the family slept. Or tried to sleep. The baby woke twice, crying with a sound like paper tearing. Sam warmed more broth, fed it drop by drop until the infant settled. The woman Claire thrashed in fever dreams, calling out names he didn't recognize. He pressed a cool cloth to her forehead, whispered that everything would be all right, knowing it probably wouldn't be. Toward morning, with the fire burned down to coals and his own exhaustion catching up to him, Sam allowed himself to close his eyes. Just for a moment. Just to rest. He dreamed of Sarah, of the cabin in Oklahoma before the fire, of Daniel taking his first steps, arms out for balance, face bright with triumph, of Sarah laughing, that sound he'd loved more than anything. In the dream, he tried to tell them to run, tried to warn them, but no words came out. He could only watch as flames appeared from nowhere, consuming everything, and Sarah's voice calling his name over and over until it became another voice. Emma's voice shaking his shoulder. Mr. Sam, wake up." He came awake, hard hand going for the gun he'd removed and set aside. Emma jumped back. "Sorry," she said, "but Mama's awake. and she's asking for Papa. Morning light, thin and gray, filtered through gaps in the shutters. Sam stood his back, protesting, every joint stiff from sleeping against the stone hearth. Claire had indeed woken propped on one elbow, eyes clearer than they'd been last night, but still bright with fever. "Who are you?" Her voice came out rough, barely more than a whisper. "Where's Robert?" Sam crossed to her, knelt. This was the moment, the truth he'd been avoiding. He could lie, could say Robert sent him, buy himself time, or he could rip the bandage off, deal with the consequences. He chose a middle path, the coward's way. "My name's Sam Carter. I was riding through yesterday, saw your cabin didn't have smoke. Came to check on you." "Robert," she said again. "My husband. Did you see him on the trail?" The way she asked, the desperate hope in those fever-bright eyes, made something twist in Sam's chest. He shook his head. "No, ma'am, I came from the east, different trail." It wasn't technically a lie. He had come from the east originally weeks ago. That he'd doubled back, found Robert's body coming from the south, those were details he could omit. For now. Claire's face crumpled. "He's been gone so long, he promised he'd be back. He promised." "How long?" "6 days. Or 7. I stopped counting." She looked around the cabin at her children, still sleeping at the fire burning low. "You did this, the fire, the food. Wasn't much. You needed heat more than anything." "We were dying." She said it simple, matter of fact, the way you'd comment on the weather. "I knew we were dying. I'd made peace with it. Then you appeared. I didn't do much. You did everything." She tried to sit up, further failed, fell back. "I don't understand why you're here. Men don't just appear in snowstorms to save strangers." Sam fed another piece of wood to the fire, buying time to think. She was right, of course. Men didn't do that. But he'd spent 8 years running from responsibility, from connection, from anything that might require him to care. Maybe it was time to run towards something, and instead. "I was heading north," he said. "Storm caught me. Your cabin was shelter." "You're lying." No accusation in it, just observation. "Or not telling everything. I can tell the difference." Sam met her eyes, saw intelligence there, and strength, the kind that came from surviving things that should have broken you. This was not a woman who needed protecting from truth, even hard truth. But neither was it time for the whole truth, not yet. Not until he understood what was happening here, who had killed Robert, and why. "Your husband," Sam said. "He went to Hebron for supplies." Claire nodded. "And to ask for help. We'd written letters. The town council, the church. No one answered. Robert said he'd go in person, make them understand." She laughed bitter, as if understanding ever fed children. "Did he have enemies? Anyone who'd want to hurt him?" Her eyes sharpened. "Why are you asking that?" "Just trying to understand the situation." "The situation is we're broke. We're starving. And my husband is a week overdue from a 3-day trip." She paused, studied Sam's face. "You know something about Robert. Tell me." This was it, the moment truth demanded its due. Sam could feel the weight of it pressing down like the snow on the roof. Tell her now, rip the bandage off. Or keep lying, keep digging himself deeper into a hole he might never climb out of. He chose the lie. God help him, he chose the lie. "I don't know anything about your husband, ma'am. I'm sorry." Claire held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded, but Sam could see she didn't believe him. She just didn't have strength left to push. "The children," she said instead. "Are they well?" "Cold and hungry, but they'll live. Your daughter Emma, she's been taking care of them, taking care of you. She's strong." "Ooh, strong. Children shouldn't have to be that strong." Claire's eyes drifted shut. "I need to get up. There's work to do." "You need to rest. Let me handle the work." "You're a stranger. Why would you do that?" "Because I failed my own family. Because I've spent 8 years running and I'm tired. Because maybe, just maybe, if I can save you, it'll mean something." "Because it's the right thing," Sam said instead. Claire's eyes opened again, searching his face for something. Whatever she found there, it must have satisfied her, because she nodded once and closed her eyes. Sam stood, stretched, muscles that screamed protest. The cabin felt warmer now, almost livable. The children were beginning to stir. Emma sat up first, then Thomas, then the younger ones. The baby made soft sounds, not quite crying, but not content either. I'm hungry, Thomas said. Then remembering manners added, please. Sam checked his supplies. Enough jerky and hardtack for maybe one more meal if he stretched it. After that, they'd be down to turnips and hope. He needed to hunt, needed to find more food, but he couldn't leave them unprotected. Not knowing that Robert's killers were out there somewhere. The thought brought him up short. Robert's killers. He'd been thinking of them as random, violence, opportunistic murder. But what if they weren't? What if they'd specifically targeted Robert? And if so, why Sam crossed to where Robert's coat hung on a peg by the door? He'd brought it from the body last night along with Robert's boots and belt. In daylight, he could see the coat better. Well made once, but patched and repatched. The pockets held what Sam had already found: knife money, tobacco. But there was an inside pocket he had missed in the dark. He found it now sewn into the lining. Inside a piece of paper folded small. He pulled it out, unfolded it carefully. It was a telegram dated 3 weeks ago, from Helena. The message was brief. Silver assay, complete, stop. Vein confirmed, 50,000 value. Stop, meet Blackwood. January 15, stop, details to follow. Sam read it 3 times. Silver assay, $50,000. A meeting with someone named Blackwood on January 15th. That would have been 5 days ago, right around when Robert left for Hebron. $50,000. That changed everything. Emma appeared at his elbow, silent as a ghost. What's that? Sam folded the telegram, tucked it away. Just a letter. About Papa. The girl missed nothing. Sam made a decision. Yes, about your Papa. Emma, I need to ask you something. Did your father ever talk about silver? About a mine? Emma's face went carefully blank, the way children's faces do when they've been told to keep secrets. I'm not supposed to say. I'm trying to help your family, but I need to know what's going on. The girl chewed her lip, thinking. Finally, she said, Papa told Mama it was going to save us. The silver. That we wouldn't be poor anymore. But she told him not to get his hopes up. That men like us don't get saved. Did he say where the silver was? Coulter's Ridge. That's where Grandpa died, in the mine. Papa said it belonged to us now, to Mama, because Grandpa left it to her when he passed. But there wasn't any money in it then. Just rocks. She paused. Is that why Papa hasn't come home? Because of the silver out of the mouths of children? Sam looked down at this 9-year-old girl who'd already figured out more than most adults would have. I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm going to find out. The day passed in necessary work. Sam checked his horse, fed it from the small amount of oats he carried. He dug out what he could from the woodpile, brought it inside to thaw. He checked the root cellar again, pulled up the turnips and potatoes found. They were better than he'd thought. Not good, but edible. Claire slept most of the day, waking only to feed the baby. The fever had broken, leaving her weak as water. Sam made thin soup from the turnips, forced her to eat. She managed a few spoonfuls before exhaustion claimed her again. The children, with food in their bellies and warmth returning to their bones, began to act like children instead of survivors. Thomas found a carved wooden horse in the trunk, played with it by the fire. The younger ones, Michael and Lucy, built towers from sticks and knocked them down. Emma helped Sam with chores, asked questions he mostly didn't answer. As afternoon faded into evening, Sam found himself thinking about the telegram. About silver worth $50,000. About a meeting with someone named Blackwood. About 2 riders who'd shot a man in the back and rode away like it meant nothing. If Robert owned a silver mine worth that much, he'd been on his way to make a deal, maybe sell it, maybe leverage it for supplies and help his family needed. Someone had stopped him, which meant someone knew about the silver, knew about the meeting, and didn't want it to happen. Blackwood. The name meant nothing to Sam, but he filed it away. Tomorrow, if the weather cleared, he'd ride to Hebron, ask questions. Maybe find the law, though. In his experience, the law in these territories was often more interested in money than justice. Maybe Robert had learned that the hard way. Night fell again. Sam built up the fire, settled in for another long watch. But this time, when exhaustion tugged at him, he fought it off. He had too many questions, too many pieces that didn't fit. And somewhere out there, 2 killers were probably wondering if anyone had found the body yet, wondering if they needed to cover their tracks. Around midnight, with everyone else asleep, Sam pulled out the telegram again. Read it by firelight. 50,000, a fortune, enough to kill for, enough to die for. He thought about Sarah's message. HW. 2 letters scratched in ash. 8 years of searching, that led nowhere. And now another family in danger, another mystery to unravel. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe the universe just had a type when it came to testing Samuel Carter. Or maybe, just maybe, there was a connection he couldn't see yet. Sam folded the telegram, tucked it away. Tomorrow he'd start finding answers. Tonight he'd keep watch, keep this family safe. Because whatever else he'd failed at in his life, whatever else haunted him, he wouldn't fail them. He wouldn't let history repeat itself. Outside, the wind picked up, howling through the pines like something alive and hungry. Inside, the fire burned steady, holding back the dark. And Sam Carter, drifter and failed protector, sat between them and waited for morning. Morning came with silence. Not the silence of death, but something gentler. The wind had stopped, and through the gaps in the shutters, Sam could see pale light that spoke of clear sky. The storm had passed. Claire was awake when he opened his eyes, sitting up against the wall with the baby in her arms. She looked stronger, though still pale, still weak. Her eyes tracked him as he stood stretched, fed the fire. "How long were you planning to lie to me?" she asked. Sam turned from the fire. "About what?" "My husband. You found him, didn't you? That's why you came here, not because of smoke or shelter or any of the stories you've been telling." There it was. The reckoning Sam had known was coming. He could keep lying, pile one deception on another until the whole structure collapsed. Or he could give her the truth she'd already figured out. He chose truth. Finally. Yes. Claire's face didn't change. She'd known then. Had probably known since yesterday. "Is he dead?" "Yes." "How?" "Shot. In the back. On the trail south of here, maybe 3 miles. Sam moved closer slowly, the way you'd approach a spooked horse. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Tell me what happened." So he did. Told her about the gunshot, about finding Robert's body, about the 2 riders whose tracks headed north. About the letter in Robert's pocket, the one that had led Sam here. He didn't mention the telegram yet. That was a complication that could wait. Claire listened without interrupting, her face a mask Sam couldn't read. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. The baby stirred in her arms, made soft sounds. She rocked him automatically, emotions so practiced it was almost unconscious. "You should have told me right away," she said finally. "Probably. Why didn't you?" Sam sat down across from her, kept his distance. "Because you were dying. Your children were dying. I figured the truth could wait until you were strong enough to hear it. And now you're strong enough." She almost smiled at that. Almost. "You don't know me well enough to judge my strength, Mr. Carter. I know you kept 5 children alive through a week of winter with no food and no heat. I know you're sitting up now when yesterday you couldn't lift your head. That's enough to judge by." Claire looked down at the baby, touched his small face with one finger. "Emma," she called softly. "Come here, sweetheart." Emma emerged from the pile of blankets where the other children still slept. She came to her mother's shade and Claire put an arm around her. "Mr. Carter has something to tell you. About your papa. I want you to listen, and then I want you to be strong. Can you do that?" Emma nodded, though her face had already gone pale. Children knew. They always knew when the world was about to break. Sam told her simpler this time, fewer details. Her father had died on the trail. He'd been killed. Sam had found him and come here to help. Emma listened, her face very still. When Sam finished, she said, "Did it hurt?" Of all the questions Sam had expected, that wasn't one. He thought about the bullet wound, about how fast it must have been. "No," he lied. "It was quick." Emma nodded once, accepting this. Then she turned and went back to the blankets, crawled in next to Thomas, put her arms around her brother. She didn't cry. Sam thought maybe that was worse than tears. "She'll break later," Claire said quietly. "When she's alone. When she thinks no one's watching. That's what I used to do." She looked at Sam. "Who killed him?" "I don't know. 2 men on horses. I followed their tracks north but lost them in the dark." "You followed them toward here?" "Yes." "So they know about this cabin, about us?" "Maybe. Or maybe they were just heading somewhere and this happened to be on the way." Claire shook her head. "You don't believe that any more than I do. Why did they kill him, Mr. Carter? Was it robbery?" This was where it got complicated. Sam pulled out the telegram, handed it to her. "I found this in his coat." hidden in the lining. Claire read it, her lips moving slightly. When she finished, she read it again. Then she looked up at Sam, and there was something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Not quite anger, not quite fear, something harder. 50,000, she said. That's what it says. The mine. It has to be the mine. Your father's mine. My father's claim. He died before he could properly work it. She folded the telegram carefully as if it might break. I should explain. About my father, about how we ended up here. Sam settled in to listen. Outside, he could hear the other children beginning to wake. The day was starting, whether they were ready or not. My father was James Hartley, Claire began. He was a prospector. Spent his whole life looking for the big strike, the one that would make him rich. Dragged my mother all over the territories following rumors and dreams. She died in Nevada when I was 12. Fever. After that, it was just me and him. She shifted the baby to her other arm, absently adjusting the blanket around him. I met Robert when I was 19. He was working as a store clerk in Helena. Seemed steady, responsible. Everything my father wasn't. We married within 6 months. Papa was happy for me, said I deserved better than a prospector's life. But he kept prospecting, Sam said. He did. Found the claim at Coulter's Ridge in 1889. Real silver, he said. Not much, but enough. He filed the claim legal, started working it slow. Then in 1891, there was an accident. A cave-in, they said. She paused, and Sam heard the doubt in that last word. You don't think it was an accident? I don't know what to think. They never found his body. The mine was unstable, they said. Too dangerous to dig. They declared him dead after 3 days, buried in an empty coffin. Claire looked at the telegram in her hands. The claim passed to me. I was his only heir. Robert wanted to sell it, but I couldn't. It was all I had left of Papa. So you kept it? We did. For 6 years, we paid the yearly fees to keep the claim active, even though we had no money to work it. Robert would go up there sometimes, bring back samples. Nothing promising. Until 3 months ago. She stood shakier than Sam would have liked, but determined. Crossed to the trunk in the corner, opened it, pulled out a small cloth bag. Inside, rocks. She handed one to Sam. Even in the dim cabin light, he could see the silver veining through the stone. Not surface silver either. Deep vein, the kind that meant real money. Robert took samples to Helena, Claire said. Had them assayed. That's when he got the telegram. She took the rock back, weighed it in her hand. $50,000. Can you imagine? We'd never seen $100 all at once, let alone 50,000. He was going to sell. He was going to negotiate. Meet with this Blackwood person, see what kind of deal he could make. He needed money immediately for supplies for the debt, but he didn't want to sell outright if he could help it. Wanted to see if maybe we could work the mine ourselves, keep more of the profit. Sam thought about the 2 riders, the bullet in Robert's back. Someone didn't want that meeting to happen. You think Blackwood killed him or had him killed? I don't know, maybe. Or maybe someone else found out about the silver, decided to take their own shot at it. He stood, moved to the window, looked out at the day. Clear sky, bright sun on snow. Good riding weather. I need to go to Helena, ask questions, find out who this Blackwood is, and leave us here alone. If whoever killed Robert knows about the claim, knows about us. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. They both knew what happened to inconvenient witnesses and rightful owners when money was involved. You could come with me, Sam said. All of you, safer than staying here. Claire looked at her children. Emma and Thomas were up now, Thomas playing with his wooden horse, Emma watching the adults with that too-old awareness. The younger one still slept, exhausted from days of hunger and cold. The baby's too weak, Claire said, and I'm not strong enough yet to ride, let alone ride while carrying him. We'd slow you down, get you killed. She was right, though Sam hated admitting it. Then I'll leave you my rifle. Extra ammunition. You know how to shoot. Papa taught me when I was young. I'm not a great shot, but I can manage. Keep the door barred. Don't open it for anyone except me. I'll be back in 4 days, 5 at most. Helena's a full day's ride, and I'll need time to ask questions. And if you're not, it was a fair question. Sam thought about all the ways this could go wrong. If I'm not back in 4 days, take the children and head south to Hebron. Find the marshal, tell him everything. Give him this. He pulled out the telegram, handed it to her. It's not proof, but it's something. Claire took it, tucked it into her dress. Why are you doing this? Really doing this? You could have reported the body and ridden on. None of this is your problem. Sam looked at her, this woman who'd survived poverty and abuse and the slow death of dreams, who'd kept her children alive through force of will, who looked at him now with eyes that demanded honesty. Because 8 years ago I had a family, he said, a wife, a son, someone killed them, burned down our cabin while I was away working. I spent 2 years looking for who did it, found nothing, gave up, started drifting. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Your husband died because I wasn't there to stop it. I can't change that. But maybe I can stop whoever killed him from finishing what they started. Claire studied his face for a long moment. What was her name? Your wife is Sarah. And your son, Daniel. He was 2. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. Sam, and I'm sorry too, for your husband, for your children, for all of this. Robert wasn't a good man, Claire said quietly. He drank, he had a temper. There are bruises on my arms that are his doing, not the cold's. She held up a hand before Sam could respond. I'm not saying he deserved to die. No one deserves that. But I won't pretend our marriage was something it wasn't. I won't make him a saint now that he's gone. The honesty of it took Sam off guard. Most widows he'd known either canonized or vilified their dead husbands. Claire did neither, just stated facts, let them stand. He was going to Hebron for help, she continued. That part was true, but he was also going because he'd gotten in a fight with me the night before he left. About the mine, about money, about everything. He said I was never satisfied, never grateful for what he provided. I said if this was provision, I'd rather starve. We said ugly things, and then he left, and those ugly things are the last words we spoke to each other. She looked down at the baby in her arms, this child who would never remember his father. So when you ask why I'm not crying, why I'm not falling apart, that's why. I grieved this marriage a long time ago. I'll grieve for my children, for what they've lost. But for myself, she shook her head. I just feel tired, and maybe underneath the tired a little bit relieved. Does that make me a terrible person? It makes you honest, Sam said. Outside, a bird called the first Sam had heard in days. Spring was coming slow but certain. The world would thaw, life would return, but first there were questions to answer and debts to settle. Sam spent the rest of the morning preparing to leave. He showed Claire how to load the rifle, how to brace it against her shoulder to manage the kick. She practiced aiming at knots in the cabin wall until he was satisfied she could hit what she pointed at. He brought in more wood enough for 3 days if they were careful. Showed Emma how to set snares for rabbits, how to read tracks in the snow. The girl learned fast, asked smart questions. Sam could see why she kept everyone alive. Thomas followed Sam everywhere, firing questions like bullets. How far to Helena? How fast could horses run? Had Sam ever shot anyone? That last one stopped Sam cold. Why do you ask? Because Papa said sometimes men have to do hard things. I wondered if you were that kind of man. Sam knelt to the boy's level. I've done hard things, and yes, I've shot people. When I had to. When there was no other choice. It's not something to be proud of. It's just sometimes necessary. Will you have to shoot the men who killed Papa? I don't know, maybe. Maybe not. Depends on if they give me another choice. Thomas nodded, accepting in this. Emma says you're going to save us. Are you children in their terrible, beautiful honesty? Sam wanted to promise, yes, wanted to tell this boy that everything would be fine, that he'd make it all better. But he'd learned the hard way that promises were dangerous things. I'm going to try, he said instead. That's all I can promise. To try. Mama says trying is what matters. Your mama's smart. By early afternoon, Sam was packed and ready. He'd leave most of his supplies with the family travel light, just ammunition, jerky, and the clothes on his back. His horse was rested, fed, ready for the ride. Claire walked him to the door, the baby still in her arms. Be careful, she said. Always am. That's a lie. You rode into a snowstorm to check on strangers. You don't know how to be careful. She wasn't wrong. Sam smiled, touched the baby's head gently. What's his name? I just realized I never asked. Benjamin. We call him Benny. Benny, good name. Sam looked at Claire. I will come back. That's not a promise. That's a fact. Facts can be wrong. Not this one. He mounted his horse, turned it south. Behind him, he heard Emma's voice calling. Goodbye, heard Thomas shouting something about being brave. He didn't look back. Looking back made leaving harder. The trail to Helena wound through country. Sam was starting to know. Tall pines gave way to aspen groves, which gave way to open meadows, white with snow. Here and there he saw signs of spring fighting its way through. A patch of ground where snow had melted. A stream running free of ice. Birds. He reached Hebron by late afternoon, a collection of maybe 20 buildings clustered around a crossroads. Too small to be called a town, too permanent to be called a camp. The kind of place people pass through on their way to somewhere better. Sam found the general store first, tied his horse outside. The bell above the door chimed as he entered. Inside smelled of coffee and tobacco and dry goods. A man behind the counter looked up from his ledger. "Help you, information," Sam said. "I'm looking for someone, Silas Blackwood. Know him?" The storekeeper's face closed up like a door slamming. "Might. Depends why you're asking." "Business." "What kind of business?" Sam pulled out a silver dollar, set it on the counter. "The paying kind." The man looked at the coin, looked at Sam, made his calculation. The coin disappeared into his pocket. "Blackwood's out of Helena. Big man there. Owns mining interests, freight companies, probably half the politicians. If you're looking to do business with him, you'd better have something worth his time." "Silver mine worth 50,000. That enough?" The storekeeper whistled low. "That'd do it, though you'd want to be careful. Blackwood's not known for fairness in his dealings. Men who negotiate with him tend to come out worse than they went in." "How so?" "Let's just say he has a talent for making problems disappear. Business rivals claim jumpers anyone in his way. Nothing you could prove, but word gets around." Sam filed that away. "He in Helena now. Far as I know, has an office on Main Street. Big brick building, can't miss it. One more thing. You know a man named Robert Ashford had a cabin north of here?" The storekeeper thought about it. "Name's familiar. Came in here maybe 3 months back, needed supplies on credit. I turned him down. Can't run a business on promises. He come back recently. Haven't seen him since. Why?" "Just curious." Sam touched the brim of his hat. "Much obliged for the information." Outside, the day was fading. Sam considered his options. He could ride on to Helena tonight, arrive after dark, or he could camp here, approach the situation fresh in the morning. The smart choice was rest. The safe choice was rest. Sam turned his horse north toward Helena, toward questions that needed answering. He'd sleep when he was dead. The ride took 4 hours through country that grew more civilized as he went. More cabins, more fence lines, more signs of human habitation. By the time Helena appeared on the horizon, full dark had fallen, and light showed in windows like scattered stars. Helena was a real town, maybe 500 people with proper streets and painted buildings. The main street was wide enough for 2 wagons to pass, lined with storefronts and saloons and businesses that spoke of money and permanence. At the far end, Sam could see the brick building the storekeeper had mentioned. Even in darkness, it stood out. 3 stories windows that reflected lamplight, a sign in gold letters, Blackwood Mining and Freight. Sam found a livery stable, paid for his horse to be stabled and fed. The hostler eyed him with the particular attention that strangers got in small towns. "Passing through, maybe. Depends on business." "What kind of business?" "The kind that's mine." The hostler grunted, led the horse away. Sam shouldered his saddlebags, walked back into the street. He needed a room for the night, needed to think, needed to figure out his next move. But first he wanted to see this Blackwood with his own eyes. The building was locked for the night, but light showed in the upper windows. Sam stood across the street watching. After maybe 10 minutes, a shadow moved behind one of the windows. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, pacing back and forth. Too far away to see details, but Sam filed away the impression. Big man, restless man, dangerous man. A voice spoke from behind him, admiring the architecture. Sam turned. The man who'd appeared was maybe 50, wearing a marshal's star on his vest and a Colt on his hip. Gray hair, weathered face, eyes that had seen most things worth seeing and weren't impressed by much anymore. "Just getting my bearings," Sam said. "Name's Davies, town marshal. And you are Sam Carter. You here for Blackwood? Why would you think that?" Because you're standing in front of his building at 8 o'clock at night, looking up at his windows like you're planning something. Either you want to work for him or you want to kill him. I'm guessing work since killing him would be stupid, and you don't strike me as stupid. Sam smiled despite himself. You always this direct. Saves time. So which is it? Neither. I'm looking into something. Blackwood's name came up. Thought I'd learn what I could. Davy studied him for a long moment. You know, I had a deputy once, out in Oklahoma territory. Young man, good instincts, terrible poker player. Named Carter, Sam Carter. Got himself in trouble investigating a railroad gang, then disappeared when his family died. The marshal's eyes narrowed. You wouldn't be that Sam Carter, would you? Sam felt his pulse quicken. Might be. Thought you were dead. Rumor was you put a bullet in your brain after the fire. Rumors are often wrong. So they are. Davies gestured to a nearby saloon. Buy you a drink. We should talk. Sam followed him into the saloon, a place called the Lucky Dollar. It was half full, mostly miners and freight workers drowning their day in cheap whiskey. Davies found a corner table, signaled for 2 glasses. When they were seated, whiskey poured, Davies raised his glass. To not being dead. I'll drink to that. The whiskey burned, going down, settled warm in Sam's stomach. Davies leaned back in his chair, relaxed but watchful. So what really brings you to Helena, Sam Carter? And don't tell me it's general interest in local businessmen. Sam made a decision. Davies had been a friend years ago. Had taught Sam half of what he knew about reading tracks and reading people. If there was anyone in this town he could trust, it was this man. I found a body 3 days ago, man named Robert Ashford, shot in the back on the trail south of Hebron, left a widow and 5 kids. Davies' face went serious. I heard about Ashford. Word was he took off, abandoned his family. Word's wrong. He's dead. I've found him. You report it? Not yet. Wanted to understand what I was reporting first. And Sam pulled out the telegram, though it hurt to let it out of his sight. Davies read it, face getting harder with each word. 50,000, he said. That's motive for damn near anything. Ashford was supposed to meet Blackwood on the 15th. 5 days ago. Never made it. You think Blackwood had him killed? I think it's possible. Davies handed the telegram back. It's possible. It's also unprovable. Blackwood's got lawyers' money, half the territory in his pocket. Even if he did order the killing, you'd never pin it on him. I'm not trying to pin anything. I'm trying to understand what happened. And maybe if I'm lucky, find the men who actually pulled the trigger. Why Ashford was nothing to you. Sam thought about Claire, about Emma and Thomas, and the baby. About promises he hadn't made but felt anyway. Because his family deserves to know. And because maybe, just maybe, this is connected to something else I've been looking for. What else? 8 years ago, my wife and son died in a fire. I always thought it was connected to the gang I was investigating, but I could never prove it. Never even found the gang after it happened. They vanished. I remember. Harrison Webb's gang. Railroad robbery, 2 guards killed. You were close to breaking the case when the fire happened. The name hit Sam like a fist. Harrison Webb. That's what my wife wrote before she died, HW. I thought it was initials, thought it was one of the gang members. But maybe it was Webb himself. Davies looked uncomfortable. Sam, I need to tell you something about Webb. You know where he is? No, but I know he didn't stay in Oklahoma. Word I heard he came west. Changed his name. Went legitimate, or as legitimate as men like him ever go. You're saying he's here in Montana. I'm saying it's possible. I'm also saying that if Harrison Webb did reinvent himself, and if he's as connected as I think he is, going after him would be suicide. Sam felt something cold settle in his chest. You think Webb is Blackwood? I think it's a hell of a coincidence if he's not. Blackwood appeared in Helena about 7 years ago. Had money but no clear source for it. Started buying up mining claims, building an empire. No one knew where he came from, and he's always been ruthless about competition. 7 years. That would be right after Sarah died, right after the gang disappeared. I need to see him, Sam said, face to face tomorrow. That's a bad idea. I didn't ask if it was good. I asked how to make it happen. Davies' side finished his whiskey. Blackwood keeps office hours, 9 to noon most days. You want to see him go tomorrow morning. Tell his secretary you have information about the Coulter's Ridge claim. That'll get you in the door. And then what? Then you look him in the eye and see if you recognize him. But Sam, even if it is Webb, even if you're right about everything, what are you going to do? You can't arrest him. You're not law anymore. And even if you were, you don't have evidence. I'll figure that out when I get there. They talked for another hour, catching up trading stories. Davies had retired from the U.S. Marshal Service 2 years ago, took the job in Helena because it was quiet and the pay was decent. He'd never married, never put down roots. In his own way, he'd been drifting as much as Sam. Finally, Davies stood. Get some rest. Morning comes early. And Sam, be careful. Men like Blackwood didn't get where they are by playing fair. I know. Sam found a room above the saloon, cheap but clean. He lay on the narrow bed staring at the ceiling, turning pieces over in his mind. Robert Ashford killed for a silver mine. Harrison Webb reinvented as Silas Blackwood. Sarah and Daniel dead in a fire 8 years ago. Somewhere in all of this, there was a connection, a thread that tied everything together. He thought about Claire and her children alone in that cabin, thought about the rifle he'd left her hoping it would be enough, thought about promises and failures and second chances. Tomorrow he'd get answers, one way or another. Sleep came eventually, troubled by dreams of fire and blood and Sarah's voice calling his name. He woke before dawn, dress-checked his gun. The Colt felt solid in his hand, familiar. He'd killed men with this gun, might have to kill again. But first he had to know. The sun was just touching the mountains when Sam walked up the steps of the Blackwood Mining and Freight Building. The door was unlocked, the foyer empty except for a desk where a severe-looking woman sat shuffling papers. I need to see Mr. Blackwood, Sam said. Do you have an appointment? No, but I have information about the Coulter's Ridge silver claim. He'll want to hear it. The woman's eyebrows rose slightly. Your name, Sam Carter. She disappeared through a door behind her desk. Sam waited, counting his heartbeats. 1 minute, 2, then the woman reappeared. Mr. Blackwood will see you, but I warn you he's a busy man. You have 5 minutes. She led him down a hallway paneled in dark wood past offices where men bent over ledgers and maps. At the end, double doors opened into a large office. Windows looked out over the street. A massive desk dominated the room, and behind it sat the man Sam had come to see. Silas Blackwood was 50 if he was a day broad across the shoulders, with iron gray hair and a face that had been handsome once before hardness settled into it. He wore an expensive suit, a gold watch chain across his vest. Everything about him spoke of success, of power, of a man who'd clawed his way up from nothing and wasn't about to slide back down. He looked up as Sam entered, and for just a second, something flickered in his eyes, recognition, surprise. It was gone too fast to be sure. Mr. Carter, Blackwood said, his voice smooth as oiled leather. My secretary says you have information about Coulter's Ridge. Sam stepped closer, studying the man's face, looking for Harrison Webb in those features. The problem was he'd never actually seen Webb, had only descriptions, wanted posters, secondhand accounts. Webb had been good at staying in the shadows. I represent the current owner of the claim, Sam said. Mrs. Claire Ashford, widow of Robert Ashford. Blackwood's expression didn't change, but his hands stilled on the papers in front of him. Widow, I wasn't aware Mr. Ashford had passed. He died 5 days ago, shot on the trail south of Hebron. How tragic. Blackwood folded his hands. And you are a friend of the family. I see. Well, please convey my condolences to Mrs. Ashford. As for the claim, I had a meeting scheduled with her husband to discuss potential purchase. I assume she's interested in proceeding. That depends on what you're offering and why you wanted to meet on the 15th specifically. The 15th was convenient for my schedule. As for the offer, I'm prepared to be generous. Say $5,000. Cash. For the claim and all mineral rights. $5,000, a tenth of what the mine was actually worth. Sam felt anger burn in his chest, but kept his voice level. The assay came back at $50,000. Assays can be optimistic. Once you factor in extraction costs, transportation, market fluctuations, $5,000 is more than fair. Or you could be trying to steal a fortune from a widow and her children. Blackwood's eyes went cold. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Carter. I'd be careful making them. I'm just stating facts. Robert Ashford had a mine worth 50,000. You wanted to meet with him. He died before that meeting. Now you're offering his widow a fraction of what it's worth. From where I stand, that looks suspicious. From where you stand, you don't know a damn thing about mining or business. Blackwood stood and Sam realized the man was taller than he'd thought. I don't appreciate strangers coming into my office and making implications about my character. The offer is 5,000. Mrs. Ashford has 1 week to accept or reject. After that, the offer is withdrawn. She'll reject it. Then she'll get nothing. And that mine will sit idle until she can't afford to keep the claim. Then it'll revert to the territory and I'll purchase it legal through auction. Either way, I get what I want. This way, she at least gets something out of it. Sam took a step forward. Did you kill him, or did you just hire someone to do it? Blackwood smiled, cold and sharp. You're testing my patience, Mr. Carter. I don't know what happened to Robert Ashford, but I do know that accidents happen all the time in this territory. Men get lost in storms, fall off cliffs, encounter bears or wolves or any number of dangers. The wilderness doesn't discriminate. That sounds like a threat. It sounds like reality. Now get out of my office and tell Mrs. Ashford she has 1 week. After that, she's on her own. Sam held his ground for another moment, memorizing everything about this man. The coldness in his eyes, the casual way he spoke about death, the confidence of someone who'd gotten away with terrible things for so long he no longer feared consequences. One more question, Sam said. Did you ever go by another name before Blackwood? For the first time, Blackwood's composure cracked. Just slightly. Just enough. What did you say? I asked if you were ever called anything else. Say Harrison Webb. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Blackwood stared at Sam with an intensity that confirmed everything Sam needed to know. This was Webb. This was the man whose gang had killed Sarah and Daniel. This was the man who'd torched Sam's cabin and disappeared into the west. I think we're done here, Blackwood said quietly. Too quietly. Get out, now. Sam turned to leave, then stopped at the door. 1 week, then Mrs. Ashford takes her business elsewhere. There is nowhere else, Mr. Carter. Not in this territory. I own everywhere that matters. Sam left without responding. Walked out of the office through the foyer into the morning sun. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage barely contained. Davies was waiting across the street, leaning against a post. He straightened when Sam appeared. Well, it's him. It's Webb. You're sure, as sure as I can be. He didn't deny it. And when I said the name, he knew. He knew exactly who I was talking about. Davies looked troubled. Sam, what are you planning to do? I'm going to bring him down. For Sarah, for Daniel, for Robert Ashford, for every person he's ever hurt. How you don't have evidence. You don't have witnesses. You don't have anything except suspicion and old grief. Sam thought about Claire's words, about her father's death ruled accidental, about the cave-in that left no body, about 6 years of paying fees on a claim everyone said was worthless. There's a body, Sam said. Claire's father, James Hartley. He died in that mine in 1891. They said it was a cave-in. They said it was too dangerous to recover the body. But what if it wasn't? What if Webb killed him, same as he killed Robert, same as he killed Sarah? What if the body's still there? And what if we can prove how he really died? Davies' eyes widened. You want to dig up a 6-year-old corpse from an unstable mine. I want proof. That's where the proof is. That's insane. Probably, but it's also the only way. If we can prove Webb killed Hartley, we can connect him to Robert's murder. And maybe if we're lucky, we can find something that ties him to Oklahoma, to the gang, to my family. Davies was quiet for a long time thinking. Finally, he said, I must be getting old because I'm actually considering this. You and Trish, I'm in. But we're going to need help, and we're going to need to be smart about it. Because if Webb figures out what we're doing, we'll both end up in graves next to Hartley. They spent the rest of the morning planning. Davies had contacts, people who owed him favors. He could get men who could be trusted. They'd need mining equipment, lights, rope. They'd need to move fast before Webb realized what they were up to. But first, Sam needed to check on Claire and the children. He'd been gone almost 2 days. Time to head back, make sure they were safe, tell Claire what he'd learned. He left Helena at noon riding hard, made Hebron by evening push through the night. By the time the cabin appeared in the distance, dawn was breaking and Sam was running on coffee and determination. He approached cautiously, watching for signs of trouble. But everything looked quiet. Smoke rose from the chimney, the door was closed. No tracks in the snow except his own from 2 days ago drifted over, but still visible. Sam dismounted, called out, "Claire, it's Sam!" The door opened. Claire stood there, rifle in her hands, finger off the trigger, but ready. When she saw it was really him, her shoulders dropped with relief. "You came back." "Said I would." Men say a lot of things. But she was smiling, and Sam realized he'd been worried about that smile, about whether he'd see it again. Inside, the children rushed him like he'd been gone a year instead of 2 days. Emma hugged his waist. Thomas peppered him with questions. Even the baby seemed happy, reaching out with small hands. "I found him," Sam said when they'd settled. "Blackwood. He's in Helena. And Claire, I think he's someone else, someone I've been looking for a long time." He told her everything. About Webb, about the gang, about Sarah and Daniel, about the suspicion that Webb had killed her father, about the plan to go into the mine, find proof. Claire listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "It's dangerous," she said finally. "Yes." "You could die." "Yes. But if you succeed, we'd have proof. We could stop him, keep him from hurting anyone else." "That's the idea." Claire looked at her children, then back at Sam. "When do we leave?" "We. You don't think I'm staying here while you dig up my father, do you? That mine is on my claim. I know the layout better than anyone. You will need me. It's too dangerous, and someone needs to stay with the children." "Emma can stay with them. She's done it before. She can do it again." Emma, listening from across the room, nodded. "I can, Mama. I'll keep everyone safe." Sam wanted to argue, wanted to insist Claire stay behind where it was safe. But looking at her face, at the determination there, he knew she'd made up her mind. And truthfully, she was right. They needed someone who knew the mine. "All right," he said, "but we do this my way. You follow my lead, and if I say run, you run." "Understood." "Understood." They spent that day preparing. Sam rested, recovered from the ride. Claire showed him maps of the mine sketches her father had made. Tunnel 3 was the deepest, the most dangerous. That's where the cave-in had supposedly happened. That's where they'd find James Hartley, if he was there to be found. That evening, as the children slept, Sam and Claire sat by the fire. She was mending a shirt, he was cleaning his gun. Comfortable silence between them. "Thank you," Claire said suddenly. "For what?" "For caring, for coming back, for not giving up on us." She set down her mending. "Most men would have ridden away the first chance they got." "I'm not most men." "No, you're not." She looked at him, really looked at him. "When this is over, when Blackwood's finished and the mine is resolved, what will you do?" "Keep drifting." Sam hadn't thought that far ahead. For 8 years, drifting had been all he knew. But sitting here in this warm cabin with children sleeping nearby and this woman looking at him like he mattered, drifting felt less appealing than it used to. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Haven't figured that part out yet." "Well, when you do, I hope the answer includes staying close. Because whatever happens next, I think we're going to need you." She said it simple, matter of fact, no pressure, no demands, just an observation. But it settled into Sam's chest like warmth, like hope, like something he'd thought was dead but might still be living after all. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe I'll stick around." "Maybe?" Claire smiled, picked up her mending again. "I'd like that." Outside, the wind sang through the pines, but inside the fire burned steady, and for the first time in 8 years, Sam Carter felt something like home. Tomorrow they'd face whatever waited in that dark mine. Tonight they had this, and for now that was enough. They left before dawn, 3 riders moving through forests still dark with night. Sam led, followed by Claire, with Marshal Davies bringing up the rear. The horses picked their way carefully over ground, treacherous with ice and hidden rocks. No one spoke. There was nothing to say that hadn't already been said. Emma had stood in the doorway as they'd prepared to leave the baby in her arms, the younger children clustered around her legs. She'd looked so small, standing there, so impossibly young to be carrying such weight. But her chin had been up, her eyes steady. "I'll keep them safe, Mama," she'd said. "I know you will, sweetheart. And you'll come back." Claire had knelt, then gathered all 5 children close. "I will come back, I promise. And when I do, things will be different. Better. We'll have answers. We'll have justice. Now, 3 hours later, as the sun finally broke over the mountains and turned the snow to blazing white, Sam thought about that promise, about how easy it was to make promises and how hard to keep them, about all the ways this could go wrong. Davies had brought 2 deputies men he trusted. They'd meet at the mine, provide backup if things went sideways. They'd also brought equipment borrowed quietly from the mining office, nothing that would be missed for a day or two. Rope lamps, a cart for hauling rock if they needed to dig, tools for the kind of work nobody wanted to think about. Coulter's Ridge rose ahead of them, a brutal scar of bare rock cutting through the pine forest. The mine entrance was a black mouth in the mountainside timbers, framing it like broken teeth. Snow had drifted against the opening, and icicles hung from the support beams like prison bars. Sam dismounted, studied the entrance. The timbers looked old, weathered but still solid. Someone had been here since the supposed cave-in. Recently, judging by marks in the snow that weren't quite drifted over. Blackwood, Davies said, coming up beside him. He must have men checking the claim, making sure nobody else gets ideas. How long ago? Day, maybe 2, we should be clear. Claire approached the entrance slowly, one hand reaching out to touch the timber frame. Her face had gone pale, and Sam realized this was the first time she'd been here since her father died. You all right? He asked. No, but I'll manage. She pulled a folded paper from her coat, a map drawn in fading ink. Papa's survey. He marked everything, every tunnel, every shaft. Tunnel 3 branches off about 200 feet in, goes down at a steep angle. The cave-in it was supposed to be at the end, maybe another 100 feet past the junction. Sam took the map, memorized it. 300 feet into a mountain, following passages that could collapse at any moment, looking for a body 6 years dead. Simple. Davies, you and your men stay here, keep watch. Anyone comes, you fire 2 shots. We'll hear it and get out. And if you don't come out, give us 4 hours. After that, assume the worst and ride for Helena. Get word to the territorial governor, tell him everything we know about Blackwood. It won't be enough to convict, but it'll start questions. Davies nodded, looked like he wanted to say something else, didn't, just clasped Sam's hand, held it tight. Good luck. Sam lit 2 lamps, handed one to Claire. The flame guttered in the wind, then steadied. He checked his gun, made sure he had extra ammunition, tried not to think about how useless a gun would be against tons of falling rock. Ready? He asked Claire. No, let's go anyway. The mine swallowed them. The temperature dropped immediately, that particular cold that lived underground, that never saw sun or felt wind. The lamp threw shadows that jumped and twisted, making the tunnel seem alive, breathing. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. Their footsteps echoed, amplified by stone. Sam counted paces, checked the map every 50 feet, made sure they were on the right path. The main tunnel was tall enough to stand in, wide enough for 2 men to walk abreast. Cart tracks ran along the floor, rusted rails disappearing into darkness. At 200 feet, the tunnel split. The left branch continued level, shored up with newer timbers. The right branch, Tunnel 3, sloped down at an angle that made Sam's stomach clench. The timbers here were older, some cracked, one leaning at an angle that screamed instability. Claire stopped at the junction, her lamp shaking slightly. This is where Papa spent most of his time. He said the silver vein ran deeper here, richer, but it was dangerous. He knew it was dangerous, and he kept digging anyway. Men like my father, they don't know how to stop. The mountain calls them. The possibility of fortune. They'll risk anything for it. Sam thought about his own obsessions, his own 8-year hunt for a killer. Maybe he and James Hartley weren't so different. They started down Tunnel 3. The slope was gradual at first, then steeper. Sam had to brace one hand against the wall to keep from sliding. The stone was wet, slick with condensation. Somewhere ahead, he heard what sounded like shifting gravel. The tunnel's unstable, Claire said. Papa was always complaining about cave-ins, small ones. He'd shore them up and keep going. And you're sure this is where he died? This is where they said the big collapse happened, where they claimed it was too dangerous to dig him out. They pressed on, 50 feet down the slope, 100. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe. Sam's lamp began to flicker, starved for oxygen. He forced himself to breathe, slow, conserve what air there was. At 150 feet, they found the collapse. It wasn't what Sam had expected. Not a complete blockage, but a partial one. Rock and timber had fallen, creating a barrier maybe 6 feet high. But there was space above it, a gap where someone determined could squeeze through. "This is it," Claire said. "But it's not sealed. I thought it would be completely blocked." Sam studied the collapse the way the rocks had fallen. Something about it looked wrong. Staged almost, like someone had piled rocks deliberately to make it look like a natural cave-in, but hadn't quite committed to making it impassable. They didn't want to seal it completely, he said. They wanted it to look dangerous enough that nobody would try to pass, but they needed to be able to get through themselves. "Why plant them?" "Because your father's body is on the other side, and whoever killed him needed to be able to check, make sure it stayed hidden." Sam climbed the rock pile, carefully testing each stone before putting weight on it. At the top, he held his lamp high, peered through the gap. The tunnel continued on the other side, dropping even steeper. And there, maybe 20 feet past the collapse, something pale showed in the lamplight. Cloth. Faded stain, but recognizably cloth. "I found him," Sam called down. "Claire, I found your father." He heard her sharp intake of breath, heard her start to climb. He reached down, helped her up. Together they squeezed through the gap, slid down the other side. Approached the shape Sam had seen. James Hartley lay crumpled against the tunnel wall, one arm thrown out as if reaching for something. 6 years had reduced him to bones and scraps of clothing, but he was unmistakably dead, unmistakably human. His skull showed a massive fracture above the right ear, the kind of damage that didn't come from falling rocks. Claire made a sound halfway between a choke and a gasp. Sam put a hand on her shoulder, steady but not restraining. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be. I knew he was dead. I've known for 6 years." She knelt beside the remains, touched the skeletal hand gently. But knowing and seeing are different things. Sam examined the body, the position, the fracture. He didn't die in a collapse. Someone hit him from behind, caved in his skull. Then they dragged him down here, set up the rock pile to make it look like an accident. Blackwood. Or Webb, depending on what name he was using then. Your father found silver worth a fortune. Webb wanted it, so he killed him, took the claim, has been sitting on it for 6 years, waiting for the right moment to cash in. Claire stood, wiped her eyes. "We need to bring him out, get him properly buried. But first we need proof. Proof that this wasn't an accident." Sam thought about the skull fracture, about how to prove it came from murder and not falling rock. He wasn't a doctor, wasn't a forensic expert, but Davies would know people who were. If they could get the body to Helena, have it examined properly, maybe they would have their proof. He was about to suggest this when he heard it, distant but distinct. 2 gunshots echoing down from the surface. Davies' warning. Someone was coming. "We need to move," Sam said. "Now." They scrambled back up the rock pile, Claire going first. Sam took one last look at James Hartley's remains, made a silent promise to come back to do this right. Then he followed Claire through the gap. They'd made it maybe 50 feet back up the slope when they heard voices from above. Men's voices, at least 3, maybe more. Heavy footsteps. The scrape of boots on stone. Sam pulled Claire against the tunnel wall, extinguished his lamp. She did the same. Darkness swallowed them, absolute and terrifying. The voices grew louder, closer. Boss said they'd be in Tunnel 3. Caught the marshal and his boys sniffing around topside. Figured Carter would try something stupid. How'd Blackwood know? Had a man watching the Ashford cabin. Saw Carter and the widow leave this morning, sent word. Blackwood's been expecting this. The voices belonged to men comfortable with violence, men who'd done this kind of work before. Sam could hear it in their casual tone and the way they talked about murder, like it was just another job. Light appeared around the bend above them. Lamplight bouncing off stone. Sam counted shadows. 3 men, maybe 4. All armed, judging by the metallic sounds of guns being checked. They were trapped. The collapse blocked retreat. The men blocked escape. And any second now, those lights would reach far enough down the slope to reveal 2 people trying very hard to be invisible. Sam made a decision, whispered to Claire, "When I move, you run. Back to the collapse, through it, hide in Tunnel 3. Don't come out until I call for you." "What are you going to do?" "Buy you time." Sam don't, but he was already moving to stepping away from the wall, raising his voice. "That's far enough, boys. Don't take another step." The men stopped. Lamps swung in his direction, blinding him. He raised one hand to shield his eyes, kept the other near his gun. "Well, well," one of the men said. "Sam Carter, the boss said you were stubborn. Didn't say you were stupid enough to trap yourself in a mine. I could say the same about you. This tunnel's unstable. One gunshot could bring the whole thing down." "Could, but probably won't. Blackwood's had engineers check. Place is solid enough, long as you're careful." Sam took a step forward, trying to keep their attention on him, give Claire time to slip away. "So Blackwood sent you to kill me, just like he sent someone to kill Robert Ashford." "Don't know nothing about that. We're just here to have a talk. Boss wants to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "You and the widow forget about the mine. Take the 5,000 he offered. Walk away. Everybody lives. Everybody's happy. Except James Hartley and Robert Ashford and my wife and son. They don't get to be happy." The lead man, a big fellow with a scar running down his left cheek, shook his head. "You really want to dog over ancient history? Your people been dead 8 years. Ashford's been dead a week. Hartley's been bones for 6 years. Ain't nothing you can do to change that. I can make sure it doesn't happen again. I can make sure Blackwood pays." "Blackwood don't pay. Blackwood makes other people pay." The man's hand moved to his gun. "Last chance, Carter. Take the deal." Sam's mind raced. He couldn't draw fast enough to take all of them, couldn't retreat. But maybe he didn't have to do either. Maybe he just had to make them hesitate long enough. "You know what Blackwood is, right?" Sam said conversationally. "You know he used to be Harrison Webb, that he ran a gang in Oklahoma, killed 2 railroad guards, burned down my cabin with my family inside." The scarred man shifted uncomfortably. "Don't know nothing about that." "Sure you do. A man like Blackwood, he's got secrets. And men who keep those secrets, they become liabilities. How long before he decides you know too much? How long before you end up like James Hartley, buried in a mine somewhere?" "Shut up. Think about it. He's already killed to protect his identity, killed to protect his claims. What's 3 more bodies? Hell, he could blame it on a cave-in. Tragic mining accident. Nobody would question it." One of the other men spoke up. "Marcus, maybe we should—" "I said shut up, Marcus." The scarred man raised his gun. "Carter, you got 1 second to stop talking before I put a bullet in you." Sam heard movement behind him. Quiet, almost imperceptible. Claire not running away like he'd told her, but circling around in the darkness. He needed to keep their attention forward, give her whatever chance she was trying to create. "You're going to shoot me in an unstable mine. That's your play. Because I'm pretty sure Blackwood wanted this to look like an accident. Pretty sure he didn't want bodies with bullet holes turning up." Marcus hesitated. It was a tiny hesitation, barely a heartbeat, but it was enough. Sam saw the doubt creep in, saw the man's conviction waver. That's when Davies arrived. The marshal appeared from a side passage. Sam hadn't noticed one of the smaller ventilation shafts his father-in-law had marked on the map. He must have found another entrance, worked his way through the mountain's network of tunnels. His gun was drawn, eyes hard. "Drop your weapons," Davies said. "Do it now." Marcus spun, bringing his gun up. Davies shot him. The sound was massive in the confined space, echoing and re-echoing until Sam's ears rang. Marcus went down, clutching his shoulder, screaming. The other 2 men froze, hands raised, guns pointed at nothing. "I said drop them," Davies repeated. The guns clattered to the stone floor. Davies kicked them away, kept his weapon trained on the standing men. "Sam, you all right?" "Fine, Claire. Here." She emerged from the shadows to Sam's left, and he realized she'd been positioning herself for an ambush if needed. This woman, this widow who'd survived poverty and abuse and slow starvation, had been ready to fight 3 armed men to save him. "We need to move," Davies said. "Blackwood's coming himself. He's got maybe 10 men with him, be here in 20 minutes. My deputies are trying to slow them down, but it won't be enough." Sam looked at the 3 men now disarmed and contained. "What about them?" "Leave them. They're not worth dying for." Davies gestured urgently. "Come on." They ran, Claire and Sam following Davies up the slope through the junction toward the entrance. Behind them, Sam could hear Marcus screaming curses, threats, promises of what Blackwood would do when he arrived. The entrance appeared ahead, blessed daylight streaming in. They burst out into morning sun that felt like freedom. Davies's two deputies waited with the horses, both looking nervous. Blackwood, Davies asked. 5 minutes out, maybe less. We held them as long as we could. Mount up, we ride for Helena, get ahead of them. Wait, Claire said. My father, we can't leave him. Claire, there's no time. He's been in that mine for 6 years. We found him. We have proof Blackwood killed him. We can't leave him now. Sam looked at Davies, at the deputies at the trail that led away from the mine. They had maybe 3 minutes before Blackwood arrived with overwhelming force. 3 minutes to make a choice. I'll get him, all on him, Sam said. The rest of you ride. I'll catch up. Sam, that's suicide, Davies said. It's justice. Claire's right. We don't leave him. Then I'm coming with you, Claire said. No, he's my father. I'm coming. There was no time to argue. Sam grabbed a rope from the equipment pile, turned back to the mine entrance. Claire was beside him, had grabbed a lamp, was already moving. They ran down the tunnel, Claire leading, now knowing the way by heart. 200 feet to the junction, down the slope of Tunnel 3, over the rock pile through the gap. James Hartley lay where they'd left him, patient as only the dead can be. Sam wrapped the skeletal remains in a blanket from the equipment pile, secured it with rope. It weighed almost nothing, just bones and the memory of a man. I'm sorry, Papa, Claire whispered. I'm so sorry I left you here so long. They climbed back over the collapse, started up the slope. Sam carried the bundled remains, Claire carried the lamp. Behind them, deeper in the mine, Sam thought he heard something. The mountain settling, maybe, or maybe just his imagination. They'd made it halfway up when they heard horses, multiple horses arriving at the entrance, voices shouting. Blackwood's voice loud and commanding. Search the mine, I want Carter alive if possible. The woman too. Kill anyone else. Footsteps thundered into the tunnel. Lamplight appeared ahead, multiple sources getting brighter. They were out of time. Sam and Claire pressed against the tunnel wall, lamps extinguished. The bundled remains of James Hartley rested between them. In the darkness, Sam reached out, found Claire's hand, squeezed it. Men ran past them, heading for Tunnel 3. 6, maybe 8 of them. Too many to fight. Too many to evade. Sam waited until they'd passed, counted to 10, then whispered, slowly, toward the entrance. They moved like ghosts, feeling their way along the wall. Voices echoed from Tunnel 3, men shouting they'd found blood, found Marcus and the others. Orders to search every passage. The entrance appeared ahead. Just 50 feet. 40. 30. Stop right there! The voice came from directly ahead. A lamp flared to life, revealing Silas Blackwood standing in the entrance, blocking their escape. He held a revolver pointed steady at Sam's chest. Mr. Carter, Mrs. Ashford, how nice of you to save me the trouble of hunting through that maze. Blackwood's eyes dropped to the bundles Sam carried. And you brought me a present. How thoughtful. That's James Hartley, Sam said. The man you murdered 6 years ago? I have no idea what you're talking about. That's just bones. Could be anyone. Could be a prospector who got lost, died of exposure. Tragic, but hardly evidence of murder. The skull's fractured. Forensic examination will prove it. Will it? By whom? A territorial doctor who owes me money. A judge I have dinner with twice a month. Blackwood smiled. You really don't understand how this works, do you? I own this territory, every lawman, every official, every person who matters. You can't touch me. Claire stepped forward. You killed my father. You killed my husband. You have destroyed my family. I don't care who you own. I don't care how much power you have. I will see you hang. Brave words from a widow with 5 hungry children. Tell me, Mrs. Ashford, how will those children eat when you're dead? Who will care for them? Your eldest daughter, she's what, 9, 10, thinks she can keep them all alive. It was the wrong thing to say. Sam saw Claire's face change, saw something cold and final settle into her eyes. My children, she said quietly, are stronger than you'll ever be, and they'll survive this. They'll survive you. She moved fast, faster than Sam would have thought possible. Threw the lamp she'd been holding directly at Blackwood's face. He jerked back the gun, swinging wide. Sam dropped the bundled remains, drew his Colt, fired. The bullet took Blackwood in the shoulder, spun him around. He dropped his gun, clutched the wound, staggered. Sam kicked the dropped weapon away, kept his own trained on the fallen man. Behind them, shouts from the tunnel, men running, coming back toward the entrance. Sam grabbed Claire's hand, pulled her past Blackwood into the daylight. Davies was there with the horses, somehow still waiting. Thought I told you to ride, Sam said. Thought I told you this was suicide. Figured if you were going to die, might as well have company. Now mount up before those idiots figure out how to aim in the dark. They mounted Sam, still clutching the bundle of bones, Claire swinging into her saddle like she'd been born to it. Davies fired 2 shots back into the mine entrance, not aiming to kill, just to make men think twice about following. Then they were riding hard and fast down the mountain trail. Behind them, more shots, the whine of bullets passing too close. But the trail was narrow, the trees thick, and within minutes, they'd put enough distance that the shooting stopped. They rode for Helena, rode like the devil himself was chasing them. And maybe he was. By the time they reached Helena, afternoon had faded to evening. They went straight to Davies's office, secured the remains, sent for the territorial doctor. Davies posted deputies at every door, made sure no one could interfere. The doctor was an older man, competent and thorough. He examined James Hartley's skull by lamplight, measured the fracture, consulted medical texts. After an hour, he delivered his verdict. This man was struck from behind with a heavy object. Blunt force trauma consistent with murder, not accidental injury. The shape and depth of the fracture suggests something like a pickaxe or hammer. Death would have been instantaneous. It was exactly what they needed. Evidence, proof. Something even Blackwood's money and influence couldn't completely erase. But they still had problems. Blackwood had been shot but not killed. He was already spreading his story, claiming Sam and Claire had ambushed him at his own mine, tried to rob him. His men corroborated, of course. Marcus from his hospital bed swore they had been peaceful when Sam attacked. It was their word against his, and Blackwood's word carried weight. Davies worked through the night, sending telegrams to the territorial governor, to federal marshals, to anyone who might listen. Calling in favors, pulling strings, making noise. By morning, he'd assembled something that looked like a case. James Hartley murdered. Medical evidence proved it. Robert Ashford murdered. Sam's testimony and the telegram about the silver suggested motive. Harrison Webb wanted for railroad robbery and murder in Oklahoma, possibly the same man as Silas Blackwood. Circumstantial but suggestive. It wasn't enough for a conviction. Not yet. But it was enough to start an investigation. Enough to make people ask questions. Enough to make Blackwood's armor crack just a little. The territorial governor sent a federal marshal. A real one, not someone in Blackwood's pocket. He arrived 3 days later, interviewed everyone, examined the evidence. He was a hard man with tired eyes and no patience for lies. After 2 days of investigation, he made his decision. I'm arresting Silas Blackwood on suspicion of murder. I'm also opening an investigation into his business practices and his true identity. If he is Harrison Webb, if he's been running from federal charges for 8 years, he'll answer for that too. They arrested Blackwood at his office in front of witnesses in full daylight. No quiet disappearing, no convenient accidents. They took him to Helena's small jail, put him in a cell, and posted guards who couldn't be bought. The trial took 3 months to organize. By then, more evidence had emerged. A former member of Webb's gang tracked down in California, willing to testify in exchange for clemency. Records from Oklahoma showing Webb's description matched Blackwood's. More questionable deaths around Blackwood's various business dealings. It still wasn't enough for a murder conviction in James Hartley's case. Too much time, too little physical evidence beyond the skull fracture. But it was enough for conspiracy, for fraud, for federal charges related to his time as Harrison Webb. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, found Blackwood guilty on 4 counts, sentenced him to 30 years in the territorial prison. Not death, not the hanging Claire had wanted, but justice in its way. Sam stood with Claire as they led Blackwood away, the man who'd killed his wife and son, who'd destroyed so many lives in his pursuit of wealth. He looked smaller now, diminished. Just a man in chains walking toward a future of iron bars and regret. Is it enough? Claire asked. After everything, is it enough? Sam thought about Sarah and Daniel. Thought about 8 years of searching, of running, of hollow victories and bitter losses. Thought about what he'd wanted versus what he'd gotten. It has to be, because it's all we're going to get. They walked out of the courthouse into summer sun. Helena was different now. Or maybe Sam was different. The world felt less heavy, less dark. Like something that had been pressing on his chest for 8 years had finally lifted. Davies caught up with them outside. So what now, you staying in Helena? Sam looked at Claire. She looked back, a question in her eyes. I need to go back to the cabin, she said. see the children, decide what comes next. Mind if I ride with you? Sam asked. I'd like that. They left Helena the next morning, just the two of them. The ride took most of the day winding through country that had seemed so hostile in winter, but now bloomed with life. Wildflowers covered the meadows. Birds sang in the trees. The world had thawed, and with it something in Sam's heart. The cabin appeared as the sun touched the mountains. Smoke rose from the chimney. Children's voices carried on the evening air. Emma appeared in the doorway, then ran toward them, the other children following. Mama, Mr. Sam, you're back. They were swarmed with hugs, with questions, with the beautiful chaos of a family reunited. Claire held her children close, tears streaming down her face, and Sam stood back, watching, feeling something he hadn't felt in 8 years. Like maybe, just maybe, he'd found something worth staying for. That night, after the children were asleep, Claire and Sam sat on the porch. Stars filled the sky, more stars than seemed possible. The air smelled of pine and earth and possibility. What will you do? Claire asked. About the silver mine? Sell it, not to Blackwood, obviously, but there are honest buyers. The governor's already put me in touch with a company from Denver. They're offering $45,000. And with that money, pay off the debts. Buy this land outright, put it in my name so no one can take it. Set aside money for the children's education. Maybe expand the cabin, make it more comfortable. She paused. And maybe if a certain drifter decided to stay, there'd be enough to make sure he had a place here too. Sam smiled. This drifter you're talking about, that he any good? Saved my life, saved my children's lives. Got justice for my father and my husband. I'd say he's more than good. Well, then maybe he should stop drifting. Put down roots. See what it's like to stay in one place for more than a few months. Claire reached over, took his hand. I'd like that. The children would like that. Emma's already asking when you're going to move in properly. Is that what we're calling it, moving in? For now, we'll see what it becomes later. They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, but it didn't sound threatening anymore, just alive like everything else. Sam thought about Sarah, about Daniel, about the 8 years he'd spent chasing ghosts. They'd always be part of him, always be in his heart. But maybe it was time to make room for something new, something living and real and present. Claire, he said, I don't know how to do this, the staying, the family, the being part of something. I'm going to mess it up. Probably, and I'm going to mess it up too, but maybe we can mess it up together. Together, Sam repeated. The word felt good, felt right. 6 months later, they were married. Claire had spent those months healing not just her body, but the parts of her that Robert's fists had bruised deeper than skin. Sam never pushed, never demanded. He simply stayed day after day, proving through patience what words couldn't. A simple ceremony at the cabin with Davies officiating and the children as witnesses. Emma cried, Thomas cheered, the younger ones didn't entirely understand but clapped anyway. Benny, now almost 2 and walking, carried the rings on a small pillow. Sam and Claire spoke their vows standing in the place where he'd first saved her life, where she'd first saved his. Promised to love and honor and cherish. Promised to face whatever came together. The silver mine sold for $48,000, more than anyone had expected. With that money, Claire bought the land surrounding their cabin, expanded the house, built a proper barn. She hired a tutor for the children, made sure they'd have opportunities she'd never had. Sam took a job with Davies working as a deputy marshal. Part-time at first, then full-time, when he proved he still had the instincts, still had the skills. He was good at it, good at helping people, at standing between danger and those who couldn't protect themselves. Emma grew up smart and strong, became a teacher like her mother had always dreamed of being. Thomas learned mining and business, eventually took over management of a new claim Claire purchased. The younger children grew healthy and happy, knowing nothing of the darkness that had almost claimed them. On winter nights when snow fell soft outside and the fire burned warm inside, he'd sometimes think about that day he'd heard the gunshot, about how close he'd come to riding past to leaving another family to die in the cold, about how one choice, one moment of conscience had changed everything. What are you thinking about? Claire would ask, seeing his faraway look. About how lucky I am. We're all lucky. You gave us a second chance. We gave you one too. And that was the truth of it. Salvation wasn't a one-way street. Sam had saved Claire and her children, but they'd saved him too. Pulled him back from the edge of endless drifting, gave him a reason to stop, to stay, to believe in tomorrow. Years later, when Emma asked him to tell the story of how he met her mother, Sam would start with the gunshot, with the choice to investigate instead of riding past. With the moment, everything changed. But he'd end with the cabin, with the family, with the life they'd built together from pieces that should have been too broken to repair. He'd end with hope, with love, with the understanding that sometimes the worst storms bring the most unexpected blessings. Outside, the Montana wind sang through the pines, but inside, surrounded by the people he'd chosen and who'd chosen him back, Sam Carter finally truly came home. The silver had brought them together. But it was love, fierce and hard-won, that kept them that way. And in a territory built on gold rushes and quick fortunes and temporary dreams, that permanence was worth more than any mine could ever yield. Sometimes late at night, Sam would go outside and look up at the stars. Think about Sarah and Daniel, about the life he'd lost. He'd whisper apologies and gratitudes, tell them about the new family that didn't replace them, but existed alongside them in his heart. And maybe it was imagination, maybe it was wind, but sometimes he swore he heard Sarah's voice whisper back, "Go on, love, be happy. That's all we ever wanted for you." So he did.